They say your wedding day is supposed to be the happiest day of your life. But what happens when someone uses that sacred day not to celebrate love, but to destroy another person? What happens when the white dress and flower arrangements become weapons? What happens when the altar becomes a stage for the cruelest humiliation imaginable? This is the story of how my cousin tried to turn her wedding into my public execution, how she planned every detail, not just of her ceremony, but of my destruction, and how the truth I discovered changed everything. My name is Emma, and this is the story of the day I was supposed to be shamed in front of everyone I loved, and how my family's darkest secret became my greatest weapon. Growing up, I always knew I was different in my family. Not different in a special way, different in the way that made me invisible. While my cousin Rachel shone like the sun, I existed in her shadow, quiet and unnoticed. Rachel was everything I wasn't. Beautiful, confident, successful. She had the kind of blonde hair that looked like liquid gold in the sunlight, the kind of smile that made people stop and stare, the kind of presence that commanded every room she entered. I had mousy brown hair that never quite did what I wanted, a shy smile that barely showed my teeth, and a tendency to fade into the background of family photos. Our mothers were sisters, but you would never know it from how differently they treated us. Aunt Helen, Rachel's mother, was the successful one. The one who married rich, lived in the big house on the hill, drove the luxury cars. My mother, Sarah, was the quiet one, the one who married for love instead of money, who worked 2 jobs to keep our small apartment, who never complained but whose eyes always looked tired. Family gatherings were torture. Every holiday, every birthday, every random Sunday dinner became a showcase for Rachel's achievements. She made the honor roll. We had to hear about it for 3 months. She got accepted to a prestigious college. Aunt Helen brought it up at every possible moment. She landed a high-paying job. It became the only topic of conversation for half a year. And me? I graduated with honors too, but no one seemed to notice. I got into a good college, but it wasn't prestigious enough to mention. I worked hard at my job, but it didn't pay enough to impress anyone. I tried not to let it bother me. I really did. I told myself that comparison was the thief of joy, that everyone's path was different, that success meant different things to different people. But it's hard not to feel small when your own family treats you like you're less than. The worst part wasn't even the obvious favoritism. It was the subtle cruelty. The way Aunt Helen would look at my mother with pity in her eyes, the way she would offer to buy me new clothes because mine looked worn, the way she would suggest beauty treatments or diet plans, always with that concerned tone that made it sound like she was helping when she was really just pointing out my flaws. Rachel learned from her mother well. She was never overtly mean. She was too smart for that. Instead, she perfected the art of the backhanded compliment, the concerned suggestion, the helpful advice that cut like a knife. She would say things like, "Emma, you're so brave for not caring about fashion," or "I wish I could be as relaxed about my appearance as you are," or my personal favorite, "It's so refreshing to meet someone who doesn't let their career define them." Every word was poison wrapped in honey. But I endured it. I smiled and nodded and told myself it didn't matter. I focused on my life, my job as a teacher, my small circle of real friends, my relationship with my mother. I built a life that had nothing to do with Rachel or Aunt Helen or their constant need to prove their superiority. For years, it worked. I found peace in my small life. I found joy in simple things. I convinced myself that I had moved beyond their judgment. I was wrong. Everything changed the day Rachel got engaged. Not just changed, exploded. If her previous achievements had been celebrated, this was on another level entirely. You would think she had discovered the cure for cancer, ended world hunger, and achieved world peace all at once. Her fiancé, Derek, was exactly the kind of man everyone expected Rachel to marry. Handsome, successful, from a wealthy family. He was a corporate lawyer at a prestigious firm, drove an expensive car, wore suits that cost more than my monthly rent. He was perfect. Too perfect if you asked me, but no one was asking me. The engagement party was held at a country club that required a membership fee higher than what most people earned in a year. It was lavish, extravagant, over the top. Ice sculptures, a live band, champagne flowing like water, food from a Michelin-starred chef. It was less an engagement party and more a declaration of superiority. I almost didn't go. I knew what it would be like. I knew I would spend the evening being ignored, or worse, being pitied. But my mother begged me. She said it would mean a lot to the family if I was there. She gave me that look, the one that reminded me how hard she worked to keep our family together, how much she sacrificed to maintain relationships with her sister despite everything. So I went. I put on my best dress, the one I had bought on sale 3 months ago, did my hair as nicely as I could, and drove to the country club with my mother. The moment we walked in, I regretted it. The room was filled with beautiful people in beautiful clothes having beautiful conversations. I felt like an imposter, like someone who had wandered into the wrong party. My mother squeezed my hand, and I knew she felt it too. Aunt Helen spotted us immediately. She rushed over, her smile bright and false. She kissed my mother on both cheeks, European style, like she always did when she wanted to show off. Then she turned to me. "Emma, darling, you made it. How wonderful." Her eyes scanned my outfit, and I saw the judgment flash across her face for just a moment before she masked it. "You look lovely. So practical, practical." The word felt like a slap. Not beautiful, not elegant, not stunning. Practical. Before I could respond, Rachel appeared. She looked radiant in a designer dress that probably cost more than my car. Her ring, a massive diamond that caught the light and threw rainbows across the room, seemed to have its own gravitational pull. Everyone's eyes were drawn to it. "Emma, you came." She hugged me, and I smelled her expensive perfume, felt the silk of her dress against my cheek. "I'm so glad you're here." It wouldn't be the same without family. The way she said family made it sound like an obligation, not a celebration. Derek appeared at her side, his hand possessively on her waist. Rachel introduced us, and he shook my hand with the firm grip of someone who had been taught proper etiquette from birth. His smile was polite but distant. I was already forgettable to him. "Emma's a teacher," Rachel said, and somehow she made it sound like I cleaned toilets for a living. "She's so dedicated to helping children. It's really admirable, choosing passion over, well, other things. Other things. Like money, like status. Like everything their world valued." The evening dragged on. I watched Rachel float through the room, accepting congratulations, showing off her ring, telling the story of the proposal over and over again. Derek had taken her to Paris, proposed at the top of the Eiffel Tower at sunset, arranged for a violinist to play their song. It was like something out of a movie, perfect and unreal. I found a quiet corner and sipped champagne that tasted too expensive for my palate. I counted the minutes until I could leave without being rude. My mother had been pulled into conversation with Aunt Helen and other relatives, and I could see the strain on her face as she tried to keep up with talk of vacation homes and investment portfolios. That's when I overheard it. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I had stepped outside onto the terrace to get some air, and I heard voices from just around the corner. Rachel's voice, and Aunt Helen's. "Mother, I'm telling you, this wedding is going to be perfect. I have everything planned down to the last detail. I know, darling. You've worked so hard, it's going to be the event of the year." It is. And I want to make sure everyone sees exactly what this family is capable of, especially certain people who need to understand their place. There was a pause. Then Aunt Helen's laugh, sharp and cold. "You're terrible. But I raised you right. Show them what real success looks like. Show them what they could never achieve." My stomach turned. I knew they were talking about us. About my mother and me. About our small life and modest means. About how we didn't measure up to their standards, but I still had no idea how far Rachel was willing to go to prove her point. I wouldn't know until it was almost too late. 2 weeks after the engagement party, the wedding invitation arrived. It came in a heavy cream envelope with gold embossing, my name written in elaborate calligraphy that probably required a specialist to create. Inside, the invitation itself was a work of art. Layers of expensive paper with pressed flowers and ribbon. The wedding was set for 6 months away, at an exclusive vineyard 3 hours outside the city. The invitation made it clear this would be a weekend affair, a destination wedding that required travel and accommodation. Dress code, formal. RSVP required. +1 permitted. I didn't have a +1. I had dated here and there, but nothing serious, nothing that would survive being my date to Rachel's wedding. The idea of showing up alone to watch her marry her perfect man in her perfect dress at her perfect venue made me feel sick. But again, my mother asked me to go. Again, she used that look. Again, I agreed, because I couldn't say no to the woman who had sacrificed everything for me. The months leading up to the wedding were exhausting. Rachel had chosen me to be a bridesmaid. I should have been honored. Instead, I was suspicious. Rachel and I weren't close, we weren't friends. We were cousins by blood and strangers by choice. So why would she want me in her bridal party? The first bridesmaid meeting answered my question. There were 6 of us, Rachel's carefully selected group. Her sorority sisters, her college roommate, her work friend, her childhood neighbor, and me. Everyone else was beautiful, successful, dressed in designer clothes and carrying expensive handbags. And then there was me. Rachel had chosen the bridesmaid dresses herself. They were beautiful, I had to admit. Deep burgundy silk, elegant and sophisticated. But when she handed out the sizing information, something felt off. "Emma, I estimated your size," Rachel said with a sweet smile. "I hope it fits. If not, alterations are your responsibility, of course." The dress arrived a month later. I opened the box with a sense of dread that turned out to be justified. The dress was at least 2 sizes too small. The other bridesmaids had received dresses that fit perfectly. Mine looked like it was made for a child. I called Rachel. She sounded surprised, concerned, apologetic. "Oh no, Emma, I'm so sorry. The boutique must have made a mistake, but don't worry, you can have it altered." It shouldn't cost too much. It cost $300 to alter. $300 I didn't have spare. $300 to fix a mistake that wasn't really a mistake. But it didn't stop there. The bridesmaid activities started. The dress shopping for Rachel's wedding gown, where we spent 8 hours watching her try on dresses that each cost more than I made in 3 months. The bachelorette party in Las Vegas, which required flights and hotels and expensive dinners that left my credit card crying. The bridal shower, where the suggested gift registry started at $200. Every event was designed to remind me of my place. Every activity was a subtle dig at what I couldn't afford, couldn't achieve, couldn't be. The other bridesmaids didn't seem to notice, or maybe they did and didn't care. They laughed at Rachel's jokes, admired her planning skills, gushed over every detail. They belonged in her world. I was just visiting and everyone knew it, but I kept showing up. I kept smiling. I kept pretending everything was fine. Because that's what you do for family, right? You endure. You sacrifice. You bite your tongue and keep the peace. I had no idea that peace was about to be shattered in the worst way possible. 3 weeks before the wedding, I had lunch with my mother. We met at a small cafe near her work, the kind of place we could actually afford, with reasonable prices and comfortable chairs. She looked tired, more tired than usual. The stress of the upcoming wedding was wearing on her too. "Are you okay, Mom?" I asked as we sat down with our coffee and sandwiches. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm fine, honey. Just tired. Work has been busy. And Aunt Helen has been demanding." She didn't deny it. My mother had been running errands for Aunt Helen, helping with wedding preparations, acting as a free assistant for an event she could barely afford to attend. Aunt Helen treated her like hired help, not a sister. "It'll be over soon," my mother said quietly. "After the wedding, things will go back to normal." I wasn't so sure. Something felt wrong. Call it intuition, call it paranoia, but I had a growing sense that something bad was coming. Rachel had been too nice to me lately, too sweet, too inclusive. It felt like the calm before the storm. "Mom, do you ever feel like Aunt Helen and Rachel just tolerate us? Like we're some kind of obligation they have to endure?" My mother's face fell. For a moment, I saw all the hurt and exhaustion she usually hid so well. "Emma, don't say that." They're family. Being related by blood doesn't mean they respect us. She reached across the table and took my hand. I know it's been hard. I know they can be difficult. But we're better than they are. We don't treat people based on their bank account or their status. We treat people with kindness and dignity. That's worth more than any amount of money. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to think that being a good person mattered more than being a successful person. But the world didn't seem to agree with that philosophy. The world, and especially our family, seemed to value success above everything else. 2 days later, everything changed. I was at home, grading papers on a Thursday evening when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Is this Emma Rodriguez? Yes, who is this? My name is Jessica. I'm a wedding planner. I was hired to work on Rachel Morrison's wedding. My heart started racing. Why would Rachel's wedding planner be calling me? I'm calling because I think you need to know something. I'm breaking my NDA by doing this, and I could lose my career, but I can't let this happen without warning you. Warning me? About what? There was a long pause. I heard her take a deep breath. Rachel has planned something for the reception, something involving you. She's planned a slideshow, a presentation. She calls it a tribute to family, but it's not. It's designed to humiliate you and your mother in front of everyone. I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. What are you talking about? She has photos. Old photos of you and your mother. Photos from when you were struggling financially, photos that she's manipulated and paired with captions. She's planning to show them during the reception, right after the first dance, when everyone is relaxed and happy. She wants to display them on the big screens, make jokes, point out the differences between her life and yours. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Why would she do this? I don't know. But I'd been in this industry for 10 years, and I've never seen anything this cruel. I've tried to talk her out of it, told her it's inappropriate, but she's insistent. She says it's just fun, just family teasing. But I've seen the slideshow, Emma. It's not fun, it's vicious. My hands were shaking. How bad is it? Bad. Photos of your mother working at the grocery store when you were kids, captioned with jokes about having to shop where you work. Photos of your small apartment with comments about cramped spaces. Photos of you from high school with braces and acne, compared side by side with Rachel's modeling photos. Photos of your old car next to hers. Every photo is designed to show the contrast, to make you look lesser, to make you feel small. I felt tears burning in my eyes, but I forced them back. Why are you telling me this? Because it's wrong. Because someone should stand up to her. I have a daughter, Emma, and if someone did this to my daughter, I would want someone to warn her. You deserve to know. You deserve a chance to protect yourself. What can I do? If I don't show up, it'll cause a family war. If I confront her, she'll just deny it or make me look crazy. I don't know. But at least now you know what's coming. At least you can make an informed choice. She hung up before I could ask more questions. I sat there in my living room, phone still in my hand, papers scattered around me, feeling like my world had just tilted on its axis. Rachel wasn't just mean. She wasn't just superior. She was cruel. Deliberately, calculatedly cruel. She had planned this for months, crafted every detail, prepared to humiliate me in the worst way possible in front of everyone I knew, at an event I couldn't escape. This wasn't just about being better than me. This was about destroying me. But what Jessica, the wedding planner, didn't know, what Rachel didn't know, what nobody knew, was that I had a secret too. A secret about our family that I had discovered by accident 3 months ago. A secret that Rachel and Aunt Helen had hidden for years. A secret that would change everything. And suddenly, I knew exactly what I had to do. To understand what happened next, I need to go back 3 months. Back to a quiet Saturday afternoon when I made a discovery that would change everything. I had been helping my mother clean out my grandmother's house. My grandmother had passed away 6 months earlier, and we had finally worked up the courage to sort through her things. It was emotional work, going through decades of memories, deciding what to keep and what to let go. My grandmother had lived in the same house for 50 years. Every closet was packed, every drawer was full, every surface held treasures and trinkets from a long life. My mother and I worked slowly, crying sometimes, laughing at memories, telling stories about the woman who had held our family together. I was in the attic, sorting through boxes of old photos and documents when I found it. An old shoebox, pushed far back in a corner, covered in dust. Inside were letters. Dozens of letters, old and yellowed with age, written in my grandmother's distinctive handwriting. I almost put the box aside. They were personal letters, probably not meant for anyone else to read, but one envelope caught my eye. It was addressed to my mother, but it had never been opened, never been sent. The date on the envelope was from 30 years ago, right around the time my mother and Aunt Helen were in their early 20s. I know I shouldn't have read it. It was private, personal. But something made me open that envelope. Call it fate, call it curiosity, call it divine intervention. The letter was long, written in my grandmother's careful script, and what it contained made my blood run cold. My grandmother had written about a terrible secret that had torn our family apart decades ago. She wrote about how Aunt Helen, the golden child, the successful one, the one who had everything, had built her perfect life on a lie. According to the letter, Aunt Helen had been pregnant in college. Not with Rachel. Rachel came later. This was years before. And the father wasn't her wealthy husband. The father was a man she had been seeing in secret, a man who was already married, a man who wanted nothing to do with a baby. Aunt Helen had panicked. Her perfect life, her perfect image, her perfect future was at risk. So she made a choice. She had the baby in secret, told almost no one, and then did something unthinkable. She convinced my mother to raise the baby as her own. My mother, who was younger, who was struggling, who was always trying to help her older sister. My mother, who was told this was temporary, just until Aunt Helen got back on her feet. My mother, who was too kind, too trusting, too loyal to her sister. But it wasn't temporary. Aunt Helen built her life, married her wealthy husband, had her legitimate child Rachel, and never looked back. She left my mother to struggle with a baby that wasn't hers, left her to sacrifice her own dreams and opportunities, left her to live a harder life so Aunt Helen could live an easy one. And the baby? The baby my mother had raised as her own, loved as her own, sacrificed everything for, that baby was me. I wasn't my mother's biological daughter, I was Aunt Helen's. Which meant Rachel wasn't my cousin, she was my half-sister. I sat in that dusty attic holding that letter with shaking hands, feeling my entire life rearrange itself. Every memory took on new meaning. Every interaction suddenly made sense. Aunt Helen's pity wasn't pity. It was guilt. Rachel's cruelty wasn't superiority. It was protection, keeping me at a distance, making sure I never got close enough to discover the truth. My mother's tired eyes and endless sacrifice weren't just because she loved me. They were because she had given up her entire life for her sister's mistake. I read that letter 5 times. Then I carefully photographed every page with my phone. Then I put it back in the shoebox and hid the shoebox in a different location, somewhere safe, somewhere only I could find it. When I came down from the attic, my mother looked at me with concern. "Emma, sweetheart, are you okay? You look pale." I wanted to tell her. I wanted to ask her if it was true, wanted to demand answers, wanted to scream about the injustice of it all. But I couldn't, not yet. Because if I revealed what I knew, Aunt Helen and Rachel would just deny it, would probably destroy any evidence, would turn it around and make me look like the crazy one. So I smiled. I hugged my mother, the woman who had raised me, who had loved me, who had sacrificed everything for me even though I wasn't biologically hers. "I'm fine, Mom." Just emotional. Lots of memories up there. She hugged me back, and I felt her love, real and pure and unconditional. In that moment, I realized that biology didn't matter. This woman was my mother in every way that counted. The woman who gave birth to me was just a stranger who had abandoned me to protect her own image. For 3 months, I carried that secret. I went about my life, attended the engagement party, agreed to be a bridesmaid, endured all the subtle cruelty and judgment. But now I saw it differently. Now I understood that every dig was guilt manifesting as superiority. Now I knew that Rachel's perfect life was built on the foundation of my mother's sacrifice. And when Jessica, the wedding planner, called to warn me about the slideshow, about the public humiliation Rachel had planned, everything crystallized. I knew exactly what I had to do. Rachel wanted to shame me at her wedding? Fine. But she had no idea what was coming. Because I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to reveal the truth that would shatter her perfect image, expose her mother's lies, and show everyone who the real villain in this family story was. The wedding was in 3 weeks. I had 3 weeks to prepare, 3 weeks to plan my own presentation, 3 weeks to gather evidence and proof that couldn't be denied or dismissed. Rachel thought her wedding would be my destruction. She had no idea it would be hers. The next 3 weeks were the most intense of my life. I became a woman on a mission, driven by anger, hurt, and a burning desire for justice. Not revenge, I told myself. Justice. There's a difference. First, I needed proof. The letter was good, but it wasn't enough. Rachel and Aunt Helen could claim it was fake, could say my grandmother was confused or mistaken. I needed something undeniable. I started with DNA. I ordered 2 DNA testing kits online, the kind that everyone uses to trace their ancestry. When they arrived, I carefully collected my DNA sample and sealed it. Then came the hard part. I needed Aunt Helen's DNA. I got it at a family dinner 2 weeks before the wedding. Aunt Helen had insisted we all come over to finalize last-minute wedding details. While everyone was distracted with seating charts and vendor confirmations, I volunteered to help clean up in the kitchen. Aunt Helen had been drinking wine, and I carefully retrieved her glass before it went into the dishwasher. I swabbed the rim, sealed the sample, and slipped it into my purse. I felt like a criminal. My hands shook the entire time. But I did it. I sent both samples to the lab with expedited processing. The results would take 1 week. The wedding was in 2 weeks. Perfect timing. Next, I needed documentation. I went back to my grandmother's house, back to that attic, and I searched every box, every envelope, every scrap of paper. I found more letters, more evidence of the secret Aunt Helen had kept. Hospital records from the private clinic where she had given birth. A birth certificate with my mother's name on it as the mother, but with a date and location that didn't match the story I had always been told. Photos of Aunt Helen pregnant, hidden away because they didn't fit the timeline of Rachel's birth. I photographed everything. I organized it chronologically. I built a case that would stand up in court, let alone in the court of family opinion. But I didn't stop there. I reached out to Jessica, the wedding planner who had warned me. I asked her if she could get me a copy of Rachel's planned slideshow. She hesitated, worried about her career, about getting sued. I didn't blame her. "Jessica, I'm not trying to ruin Rachel's wedding," I lied. I was absolutely trying to ruin it. I just want to be prepared. I want to know exactly what I'm walking into so I can protect my mother. That convinced her. She knew how cruel the slideshow was. She sent me the file 2 days later with a message that said simply, "I'm sorry you have to deal with this." I watched the slideshow in my apartment, alone, with tears streaming down my face. It was worse than I imagined. Every photo chosen to make me look bad. Every caption designed to cut deep. Photos of my mother looking exhausted after long shifts, captioned "Some people work hard, others hardly work." Photos of our apartment, captioned "Cozy living for cozy dreams." Photos of me through awkward teenage years, captioned "Late bloomer or just late." But the worst was the final slide. A side-by-side comparison. On one side, Rachel in her engagement photo, beautiful and radiant with Derek, with the caption, "Success looks like this." On the other side, a photo of me alone at the engagement party, looking uncomfortable and out of place, with the caption, "And this is what settling looks like." It was designed to destroy me, to make everyone laugh at me. To cement my place as the family failure while Rachel stood as the family success. My tears turned to anger, then to determination. If Rachel wanted to play this game, I would play. But I would play to win. The DNA results came back 6 days before the wedding. I opened the email with shaking hands, even though I already knew what it would say. The letter had been clear. But seeing it in scientific terms, in percentages and genetic markers, made it undeniably real. Aunt Helen was my biological mother. The probability was 99.9%. There was no room for doubt, no space for denial. I printed the results. I added them to my growing folder of evidence. And then I did something I probably shouldn't have done. I sent a copy to Derek, Rachel's fiancé, with an anonymous note that said simply, "Ask your future mother-in-law about Emma Rodriguez's birth." I didn't expect anything to come from it. I just wanted to plant seeds of doubt, to create cracks in the perfect facade they had built. Finally, I prepared my own presentation. I'm a teacher. I know how to create engaging, informative presentations. I know how to tell a story, how to build suspense, how to deliver information that captures attention and drives home a point. I worked late into the night, organizing photos, documents, DNA results, and my grandmother's letters into a coherent narrative. I wrote a script, practiced my delivery, anticipated every question and denial. I created a presentation that was professional, clear, and absolutely devastating. The file was titled simply, Family Truth. 23 slides that would blow apart 30 years of lies. I saved it to 3 different USB drives, backed it up to the cloud, and sent a copy to a trusted friend with instructions to release it publicly if anything happened to me. I wasn't taking any chances. If Rachel and Aunt Helen tried to silence me, the truth would come out anyway. 3 days before the wedding, I called my mother. "Mom, I need to tell you something." "Can you come over?" She heard the seriousness in my voice and agreed immediately. When she arrived at my apartment an hour later, I sat her down and told her everything. About finding the letter, about the DNA test, about what I had discovered. She cried. She held me and cried like her heart was breaking. "I'm so sorry, Emma. I'm so sorry you had to find out this way. I wanted to tell you so many times, but your aunt made me promise. She said it would destroy the family. She said it would hurt you more than help you." "It was never about protecting me," I said quietly. "It was about protecting her image." My mother nodded, still crying. "I know. I've known for a long time. But she's my sister, and I made a promise, and you were so young, and then years passed and it seemed easier to just keep the secret." "Did you know about the wedding slideshow?" "About what Rachel is planning?" She looked confused. "What slideshow?" I showed her. I played the file on my laptop, and we watched it together. With every slide, my mother's face grew paler, her expression more horrified. "I had no idea," she whispered when it ended. "I knew Rachel could be cruel, but this is evil. Mom, I'm going to stop it. I'm going to tell the truth at the wedding. In front of everyone. I'm going to expose what they did to you, what they did to me, what they've been hiding for 30 years. I expected her to argue, to tell me not to beg me to keep the peace. But she didn't. She looked at me with tears still on her face and said, "Good. It's time they faced consequences for their lies. It's time the truth came out." We spent the next 2 days preparing together. My mother added her own memories, her own evidence, her own perspective to my presentation. She told me stories I had never heard, about the sacrifices she made, about the promises Aunt Helen broke, about the guilt and manipulation that had controlled her life for 3 decades. By the time the wedding day arrived, I was ready. I had evidence, I had proof, I had truth on my side. Rachel wanted to shame me in front of everyone. Perfect. She had gathered all the witnesses I needed to reveal her family's darkest secret. I packed my burgundy bridesmaid dress, did my hair and makeup with extra care, and drove to the vineyard with my mother. We didn't talk much during the drive. We didn't need to. We both knew what was coming. We both knew that after today, nothing would ever be the same. As we pulled up to the beautiful venue with its rolling hills and perfect weather and expensive decorations, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Rachel had spent months planning the perfect wedding. She had no idea she was about to experience the perfect disaster. The vineyard was stunning. I had to give Rachel credit for that. She had chosen a venue that looked like something out of a fairy tale. Rolling hills covered in perfectly manicured vines, a rustic but elegant barn converted into a reception hall, strings of lights that would glow like stars once the sun set. It was the kind of place you saw in magazines, the kind of wedding that would make people jealous on social media. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 in the afternoon, with the reception to follow immediately after. I arrived at noon for bridesmaid preparations. The other bridesmaids were already there, giggling and drinking mimosas, having their hair and makeup professionally done. Rachel was in the bridal suite, probably being transformed into the perfect bride by a team of experts. I got dressed in my bridesmaid dress, the one that had cost me $300 to alter. It fit perfectly now, I had to admit. The burgundy silk was actually quite beautiful. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. I looked put together, polished, confident, not at all like the woman Rachel expected to humiliate later. "Emma, you look amazing," one of the other bridesmaids, Courtney, said as she walked past. "That color is perfect on you." I smiled. "Thank you. Big day. The biggest." Rachel must be freaking out with excitement. If only she knew what kind of excitement was really coming. At 2 o'clock, we were summoned to the bridal suite for photos. Rachel sat in front of a massive mirror, surrounded by her beauty team, looking absolutely stunning. Her dress was a work of art, layers of lace and silk that probably cost more than a car. Her hair was styled in elegant waves, her makeup flawless. She looked like a princess. No, like a queen. When she saw me, something flashed across her face. Surprise, maybe? She had probably expected me to look awkward and uncomfortable. Instead, I looked like I belonged in this bridal party. "Emma," she said with her practiced smile. "You look nice." Nice. Not beautiful, not stunning. Nice. Still trying to keep me in my place even on her wedding day. "Thank you, Rachel. You look incredible." Derek is a lucky man. Something in my tone must have caught her attention because she studied me for a moment, her eyes narrowed, but then the photographer called for group shots and the moment passed. The pre-ceremony photos took forever. Every possible combination of bridesmaids, the bride with her mother, the bride with her dress, the bride with her bouquet. I smiled for every photo, played my part perfectly. Inside, I was counting down the hours until the reception, until the moment Rachel planned to display her cruel slideshow, until the moment I would reveal the truth. My mother appeared during the photos, looking beautiful in her dress, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. Aunt Helen was with her, directing people around like she was the wedding coordinator instead of the mother of the bride. She barely looked at my mother, barely acknowledged her presence. Even on her daughter's wedding day, she couldn't treat her sister with basic respect. I caught my mother's eye and gave her a subtle nod. "Are you okay?" She nodded back. "I'm ready." The ceremony began at 4 o'clock exactly. I walked down the aisle with the other bridesmaids, holding my bouquet, smiling at the guests who filled every seat. The venue could hold 200 people, and Rachel had filled it to capacity. Everyone who was anyone in her world was there. Plus family, including my mother's side, all the relatives who had witnessed our family dynamic for years. Perfect. The more witnesses, the better. Derek stood at the altar looking nervous and handsome in his tuxedo. When Rachel appeared at the back of the aisle with her father, the entire crowd gasped. She was radiant. She floated down the aisle like something from a dream, her dress catching the afternoon light, her smile brilliant. The ceremony was traditional, beautiful, exactly what you'd expect from a couple like Rachel and Derek. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, each one more perfect than the last. They promised to love each other forever, to support each other always, to build a life together. The officiant pronounced them husband and wife. They kissed. Everyone clapped. I clapped too, wondering if Derek had received my anonymous note, wondering if he had asked questions, wondering if any cracks had formed in the perfect facade. He looked happy enough, but there was something in his eyes when he looked at Aunt Helen. Suspicion? Doubt? Or maybe I was imagining it. The ceremony concluded, and we all moved to the reception hall. It was transformed from a rustic barn into an elegant ballroom. Round tables with crisp white linens, crystal glasses, gold chargers, elaborate centerpieces. A stage had been set up at one end with a full band. On either side of the stage were massive projection screens. Those screens. That's where Rachel planned to display her slideshow. That's where she would try to destroy me. But that's also where I would destroy her first. Dinner was served at 6. Prime rib and salmon, prepared by the Michelin-starred chef. Wine flowed freely. People laughed and talked and celebrated. Rachel and Derek made their rounds, greeting guests, accepting congratulations. I watched them, these newlyweds, enjoying what they thought would be the perfect day. At 7:30, the toasts began. The best man told funny stories about Derek. The maid of honor gushed about Rachel. Both speeches were perfectly crafted, perfectly delivered, perfectly received. And then, at 8 o'clock, exactly as scheduled, the lights dimmed. Rachel took the microphone. "Thank you all so much for being here to celebrate with us," she began, her voice warm and happy. "This has been the most perfect day, surrounded by the people we love most. And speaking of people we love, I wanted to take a moment to honor family. Because family is everything, right?" People nodded, smiled, raised their glasses, so I've put together a little tribute. A look back at where we came from, how far we've come, and the different paths we all take in life. My heart started pounding. This was it. This was the moment she planned to humiliate me. The lights dimmed further. The screens lit up, and the slideshow began. But something was wrong. Rachel's face, which had been confident and smiling, suddenly went pale. Because the slideshow that appeared on those screens wasn't the one she had created, it was mine. The first slide that appeared on the giant screens wasn't a photo of my mother working at a grocery store or our small apartment. It was a title slide, simple and clear, the truth about family. Rachel's eyes went wide. She looked at the AV booth in panic, where the technician shrugged helplessly. She tried to smile, tried to play it off, but I could see the fear creeping into her expression. The second slide appeared, a photo of Aunt Helen from 30 years ago, young and pregnant, with the caption, "Sometimes the family we create isn't the family we claim." The room fell silent. Everyone's attention was locked on those screens. I stood up from my seat at the bridal party table. In the dim light, with all eyes on the screens, most people didn't notice at first, but Rachel noticed. She looked at me across the room, and I saw the moment she understood. Her face went from pale to white. She shook her head, a tiny movement, pleading. I ignored her. The slides continued, now showing documents. The hospital records from the private clinic. The birth certificate with my mother's name but incorrect details. Photos of Aunt Helen pregnant, dated stamps clearly visible. Timelines that didn't match her official story. 30 years ago, my voice came through the speakers. I had recorded narration, clear and calm, to accompany each slide. Helen Morrison gave birth to a daughter, but she wasn't ready for motherhood. Her perfect life, her perfect image, her perfect future was at risk, so she made a choice. She convinced her younger sister to raise the baby as her own. She walked away and never looked back. Gasps rippled through the room. Aunt Helen stood up from her table, her face twisted in horror and rage. "Turn this off. Turn this off right now." But the AV technician couldn't. I had paid him well to make sure my presentation couldn't be interrupted, couldn't be stopped until it finished. Money I didn't have, money I put on a credit card, money that was absolutely worth it. The slides continued. My grandmother's letter appeared page by page, her handwriting clear and damning. The narration read key excerpts, her words explaining the truth, documenting the lies, revealing the secret. That baby, the narration continued, was raised by Sarah Rodriguez. She sacrificed her dreams, her opportunities, her own life to raise a child that wasn't biologically hers. She did it out of love for her sister, out of trust, out of kindness. And how was she repaid? With judgment, with condescension, with being treated as lesser, as a failure, as someone to pity. My mother was crying now, but this time they were tears of relief, not pain. Around the room, guests were turning to look at her, at Aunt Helen, confusion and shock on their faces. The next slide showed the DNA results. Official, scientific, undeniable. A clear match between Aunt Helen and me. The narration explained the test, the methodology, the certainty of the results. That baby, my voice said clearly, was me. I am not Sarah Rodriguez's biological daughter. I am Helen Morrison's, which means Rachel isn't my cousin. She's my half-sister. The room exploded, not with applause but with gasps, shouts, the sound of 200 people reacting to bombshell information. Rachel stood frozen, her bouquet dropping from her hands. Derek stared at his new mother-in-law with an expression of horror and betrayal. Aunt Helen was screaming now, calling for someone to turn it off, threatening lawsuits, denying everything. But the screens kept rolling. The next slides showed Rachel's slideshow, the one she had planned to display. The one designed to humiliate me. Each cruel photo, each cutting caption, displayed for everyone to see. The narration didn't hold back. This is what Rachel planned to show tonight. While pretending to honor family, she was actually planning to publicly humiliate her half-sister and the woman who sacrificed everything to raise the child her mother abandoned. She planned to mock poverty, to laugh at struggle, to celebrate herself by diminishing someone else. The room had gone from shocked to angry. I could see it on faces throughout the crowd. The judgment that had always been directed at me and my mother was suddenly swinging toward Rachel and Aunt Helen. For 30 years, the narration continued, one family built their success on another family's sacrifice. For 30 years, lies were protected and truth was hidden. For 30 years, the wrong people were judged. Tonight, that ends. The final slide appeared. It was a photo of my mother and me, taken just a week ago. We were both smiling, really smiling, the kind of smile that comes from peace and truth. The caption read, "Real family isn't about blood, it's about who stays, who sacrifices, who loves unconditionally." Sarah Rodriguez is my mother in every way that matters. The screens went dark, the lights came up slowly. For a moment, nobody moved. The silence was deafening. Then my mother stood up. She walked across the room to where I stood. She hugged me, and I hugged her back, and I didn't care about the 200 people watching us. When we pulled apart, the room erupted. Not in applause, but in chaos. Some people were demanding explanations. Others were comforting my mother. Many were staring at Aunt Helen and Rachel with disgust and disappointment. Derek approached Rachel, his face a mask of betrayal and confusion. "Rachel, is this true? Did you know about this? Were you really going to show that slideshow?" Rachel tried to speak, but no words came out. She looked at me, and for the first time in our lives, I saw her looking at me not with superiority, but with fear. Aunt Helen pushed through the crowd toward me, her face twisted with rage. "How dare you? How dare you ruin my daughter's wedding? You ungrateful, spiteful, vicious mother." My mother's voice cut through the noise. Everyone stopped and turned to look at her. She had never raised her voice to her sister, never stood up to her, never challenged her, but she was done being silent. "That's enough. You don't get to play victim here. You don't get to call anyone ungrateful. You abandoned your daughter and then spent 30 years treating her and me like we were beneath you. You judged us, pitied us, made us feel small, all while hiding the fact that your perfect life was built on my sacrifice. I gave you a baby," Aunt Helen hissed. "I gave you a daughter when you couldn't have one of your own. You gave me a responsibility you didn't want," my mother shot back. "And I loved Emma from the moment I held her. I never regretted raising her, not for 1 second. What I regret is staying silent. What I regret is letting you treat us badly because I was protecting your secret." "Well, I'm done protecting you." The crowd was riveted. This wasn't just drama anymore. This was decades of family dysfunction spilling out into the open. Rachel finally found her voice. "Emma, how could you do this, on my wedding day? This was supposed to be perfect." I looked at her, this woman who was technically my half-sister but had spent her whole life treating me like garbage. "Rachel, you planned to publicly humiliate me on your wedding day. You created an entire slideshow designed to mock my mother and me in front of everyone. You weren't trying to have a perfect wedding. You were trying to destroy me while celebrating yourself. I just got there first." "That was just a joke," she said weakly. "Just family teasing. Show of hands," I said to the crowd. "Who here thinks that slideshow was just a joke?" Not a single hand went up. In fact, many people were shaking their heads, looks of disgust on their faces. Derek was still standing next to Rachel, but he had stepped away from her, putting physical distance between them. "Rachel, we need to talk. Somewhere private. Derek, please, now." He walked away toward a side room, and after a moment of hesitation, Rachel followed him, her wedding dress trailing behind her. I had a feeling that conversation wasn't going to go well for her. Aunt Helen tried to gather herself, tried to reclaim control. "Everyone, please. There's been a misunderstanding." "These accusations are—" "There's no misunderstanding, Helen." One of the older relatives, my great-uncle Mark, stood up. "I remember when you were pregnant. I remember the whispers, the questions. I remember how suddenly Sarah had a baby and you didn't. We all wondered, but we never asked. We should have asked." Others nodded. More relatives started speaking up, sharing observations they had made over the years, pieces of the puzzle they hadn't connected until now. Aunt Helen realized she had lost control of the narrative, lost the respect of her family, lost her perfect image. She grabbed her purse and her husband's arm. "We're leaving. Come on." "No." Rachel's father, Uncle Thomas, pulled his arm away. "I'm staying. I need to hear the truth. From you. All of it." She stared at him, betrayed by her own husband. Then she turned and fled the reception hall, her heels clicking on the floor, her perfect mother of the bride facade shattered. I stood in the middle of the chaos I had created, feeling strangely calm. Around me, the expensive wedding reception was falling apart. The perfect venue, perfect decorations, perfect plans, all of it meaningless now. My mother hugged me again. "Are you okay?" she whispered. "I'm perfect," I whispered back, and I meant it. The reception didn't continue. How could it? The wedding party was in shambles. The bride had disappeared into a side room with her groom for a heated conversation. The mother of the bride had fled. The shocked guests were breaking into smaller groups, talking in hushed, urgent tones, processing what they had just witnessed. Some guests left immediately, uncomfortable with the family drama. Others stayed, too invested in the outcome to leave now. I saw relatives approaching my mother, hugging her, apologizing for not standing up for her sooner, for not questioning the family dynamics that had been so clearly wrong. I found a quiet corner and sat down, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried me through the confrontation was wearing off, leaving me shaky and drained. Jessica, the wedding planner who had warned me, appeared at my side. "I probably should be mad at you for hijacking my event, but honestly, that was the most justified thing I've ever seen." She absolutely had that coming. I managed a weak smile. "I'm sorry if this ruins your reputation." She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Are you kidding? I'm going to dine out on this story for years. The wedding planner who witnessed the greatest revenge reveal of all time? I'll be a legend." We sat in silence for a moment, watching the chaos unfold around us. "What do you think will happen now?" she asked. "I don't know, but whatever happens, it won't be based on lies anymore." Rachel and Derek emerged from the side room an hour later. Rachel's makeup was ruined from crying, her perfect bridal look destroyed. Derek looked shell-shocked. They didn't return to the reception. They walked straight through the hall and out the door, presumably to their bridal suite. The honeymoon suite they had booked at the Vineyard, which was supposed to be the beginning of their perfect married life. I wondered if Derek had known about the slideshow. I wondered if he had known about the family secret. I wondered if their marriage would survive its first day. Uncle Thomas approached me around 9 o'clock, Rachel's father, my uncle. Or rather, my stepfather. The family relationships were too complicated to sort out now. "Emma, I owe you an apology. Multiple apologies. I knew Helen was hard on you and Sarah, but I didn't realize it was this bad. And I certainly didn't know about the slideshow Rachel planned." He looked genuinely devastated. "I failed you both. I failed as a father and as a brother-in-law. It's not your fault, Uncle Thomas. You didn't know the whole truth. I should have asked more questions. I should have stood up to Helen years ago. She's been controlling and difficult for our entire marriage, but I always made excuses, always enabled her behavior." He ran his hand through his hair. "I don't know if she'll come back. She stormed off in an Uber an hour ago. Won't answer my calls. I'm sorry." I didn't mean to destroy your family. You didn't destroy anything, Emma. You revealed what was already broken. There's a difference. He hugged me, this man who had always been kind but distant, and then he went to talk to my mother. I watched them speak for a long time, his posture apologetic, hers forgiving. She had always been the forgiving one. Around 10 o'clock, most of the guests had left. The band had packed up hours ago. The expensive dinner sat mostly uneaten on tables. The beautiful wedding cake, a 5-tier masterpiece, remained uncut. The photographer had stopped taking photos after my presentation, understanding that these weren't moments anyone wanted documented. I helped my mother gather our things. We were about to leave when Derek found us. "Emma, can I talk to you? Just for a minute?" My mother squeezed my hand and stepped away, giving us privacy. Derek looked exhausted, his tie loosened, his hair disheveled. He seemed 10 years older than the confident groom who had stood at the altar hours ago. "I got your note," he said quietly, "the anonymous one, a week ago." "You sent it, didn't you?" I nodded. "I did." "I thought you deserved to know before you got married." I asked Rachel about it. She denied everything. "Said you were jealous, unstable, trying to cause problems." I believed her. He laughed bitterly. "I didn't know about the slideshow, Emma, I swear. If I had known she was planning that, I never would have let it happen. Do you believe me now? About everything?" "Yes." "I confronted her after your presentation. She finally admitted it all. The secret, the slideshow, everything. She tried to justify it, said she was just protecting her mother, said you had no right to reveal family secrets." He shook his head. "But the way she talked about you, about your mother, it was cruel. I've never seen that side of her before. Or maybe I just didn't want to see it. What are you going to do?" "I don't know. We're married now, legally. But I married someone I thought I knew, and it turns out I didn't know her at all. She lied to me about who you were, about her family, about her intentions for tonight." "What else has she lied about?" I didn't have an answer for him. After a moment, he continued. "My parents left hours ago. They were disgusted by the whole situation. My mother said she always thought Rachel was too perfect, that nobody is that perfect without hiding something." He met my eyes. "I'm sorry, Emma. For everything. You deserved better from this family." "So did my mother." "Yes." She did. He walked away, back toward the bridal suite where his bride of 4 hours waited. I didn't envy either of them. My mother and I drove home in silence. It was nearly midnight when we pulled up to her apartment building. She invited me in, and we sat on her worn couch drinking tea, processing everything that had happened. "Do you regret it?" she finally asked. "What you did tonight." I thought about it carefully. "No." "Do you?" "No." She smiled, really smiled. "For the first time in 30 years, I feel free. The secret that's been weighing on me, controlling me, it's gone. Whatever happens now, at least it's based on truth. Aunt Helen is going to be furious. She's going to try to retaliate somehow. Let her try. I'm done being afraid of her. I'm done letting her control my life." We talked until 2 in the morning, going over every moment of the evening, every reaction, every revelation. Eventually, exhaustion won, and I fell asleep on her couch, feeling safer than I had in weeks. The next morning, I woke up to hundreds of messages, texts, calls, emails, social media notifications. The story had spread beyond the wedding guests. People were talking, sharing, speculating. Some messages were supportive, others were judgmental, calling me cruel for ruining a wedding. Many were from relatives I hadn't heard from in years, wanting to know more, wanting to offer opinions, wanting to be part of the drama. I ignored most of them. But I did read the message from Jessica, the wedding planner. "Derek called this morning. Wedding is being evaluated for annulment. Thought you should know. Annulment. Marriage dissolved like it never happened." I felt a pang of guilt, but only a small one. Rachel had planned to destroy me. I had simply defended myself with truth. 3 days after the wedding, Aunt Helen broke her silence. She didn't call me or my mother. Instead, she sent a lawyer's letter. It threatened legal action for defamation, emotional distress, and invasion of privacy. It demanded I pay for the wedding expenses, claiming I had ruined a $60,000 event. My mother and I met with a lawyer of our own. She reviewed everything, my evidence, the DNA test, the documented proof of the family secret. They have no case, she said confidently. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation. You didn't lie. You revealed documented facts. And as for the wedding expenses, they would have to prove damages, which means admitting in court that everything you revealed was true. They won't do that. She was right. A week later, Aunt Helen's lawyer sent a new letter dropping all threats on the condition that I sign a mutual non-disclosure agreement. They wanted to bury the story, to prevent it from spreading further. I refused to sign. My mother refused to sign. The truth was out, and we weren't going to let them seal it back up. Rachel reached out 2 weeks after the wedding. Not a call, just a text. Can we talk? I met her at a coffee shop, neutral territory. She looked terrible. No makeup, hair pulled back, dark circles under her eyes. The golden girl had lost her shine. Derek filed for annulment, she said without preamble. Our marriage lasted 4 hours, I heard. I'm sorry, are you? She laughed bitterly. You destroyed everything, Emma. My wedding, my marriage, my relationship with my father, my mother's reputation, everything. You destroyed yourself, Rachel. I just revealed what you were planning to do to me, what you've been doing to me and my mother for years. It wasn't personal. It was just how things were. You were the poor cousin. I was the successful one. That's just reality. No, Rachel. That was cruelty masquerading as reality. And the reason I was the poor cousin was because your mother abandoned me and my mother sacrificed everything to raise me. You benefited from that sacrifice, lived a better life because your mother didn't have to split her resources between 2 children. And instead of being grateful, instead of being kind, you mocked us for being less fortunate. She was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, I didn't know about you being my half-sister. My mother never told me. Would it have made a difference? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. What are you going to do now? I asked. I don't know. Derek won't talk to me. My father barely looks at me. My mother is furious at me for not being able to smooth things over. I've taken a leave of absence from work because I can't face everyone knowing what happened. She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. I know I don't deserve your sympathy. But I need you to understand something. I was raised to believe that success was everything, that image was everything, that people like you and Aunt Sarah were cautionary tales about what happens when you don't try hard enough. I was wrong. I know that now. But I was taught to be this way. Being taught doesn't excuse it, Rachel. You're an adult. You made choices. You chose to create that slideshow. You chose to plan my humiliation. You can't blame your mother for your own cruelty. She nodded slowly. You're right. I know you're right. She stood to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not sorry I got caught. Sorry that I was that person to begin with. I watched her walk away, this half-sister I had never really known, who had spent our lives making me feel lesser. I felt pity for her, but also relief. Relief that I would never have to endure her judgment again. The months after the wedding were strange. Our family was fractured, relationships broken and reformed in new configurations. Some relatives sided with Aunt Helen, claiming I had gone too far, that family secrets should stay secret. Others sided with me and my mother, finally acknowledging the unfairness we had endured for years. Aunt Helen and Uncle Thomas separated. He moved out of their house, filed for divorce. In the proceedings, more truths came out. Financial manipulation, emotional abuse, years of controlling behavior. The perfect marriage had been as fake as the perfect family image. Rachel lost her job. Not officially because of the wedding scandal, but the leave of absence turned into a performance review, which turned into a mutual decision that she should seek opportunities elsewhere. The golden girl had fallen far. I felt guilty about that for about a day. Then I remembered the slideshow, the years of cruelty, the planned humiliation, and the guilt faded. But the most surprising change happened with Derek. A month after the annulment was finalized, he reached out to me. I've been thinking a lot, he said when we met for coffee. About family, about truth, about the kind of person I want to be. Rachel lied to me about fundamental things. But you told the truth, even when it was hard, even when it cost you. I'm not a hero, Derek. I was angry and hurt and wanted revenge. Maybe. But you also stood up for your mother. You revealed injustice. You refused to let cruelty go unchallenged. He smiled. I think that took courage. We became friends after that. Not close friends, not romantic, just two people who had been caught in the same family drama and came out the other side with mutual respect. My mother flourished. Released from the burden of the secret, freed from Aunt Helen's judgment, she seemed lighter, younger. She started dating for the first time in years, joined a book club, took a vacation. She had spent 30 years putting everyone else first. Now she was finally putting herself first. As for me, I went back to teaching. My students didn't care about family drama or wedding disasters. They just wanted to learn, to grow, to be seen. I poured my energy into being the teacher I wished I had when I was young, the adult who made every student feel valued regardless of their background or circumstances. 6 months after the wedding, I ran into Rachel at a grocery store. We both froze, staring at each other across the produce section. She looked different, softer, somehow. Less polished, but more real. Emma, she said quietly. Rachel. An awkward silence stretched between us. Finally, she spoke. I'm in therapy now, working through a lot of things. My therapist suggested I reach out to you to apologize properly, but I wasn't ready. I don't know if I'll ever be ready. You don't owe me anything, Rachel. I do, though. I owe you an apology. I owe Aunt Sarah an apology. I owe myself an apology for becoming the kind of person who would plan something so cruel. She blinked back tears. I was so focused on being perfect, on being better than everyone else, that I forgot to be good. There's a difference. Yes, there is. I don't expect forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I'm trying to change. To be better. To be the kind of person who lifts people up instead of tearing them down. I looked at this woman, my half-sister, my former tormentor, and saw something I had never seen before. Genuine remorse. I appreciate you saying that, I said carefully, and I hope you succeed. But Rachel, change is a long process. It's not enough to feel bad about what you did. You have to consistently choose to be different, even when it's hard, even when no one is watching. I know, I'm learning that. She hesitated, then added, my mother still won't speak to me. She blames me for everything that happened. Says if I had been smarter, I could have prevented your revelation, could have protected her secret. She can't accept that the secret was the problem, not the revealing of it. I'm sorry, I know she's your mother. She is. But she's also someone who abandoned her child and never looked back. I'm starting to understand that you can love someone and still acknowledge they're deeply flawed. We talked for a few more minutes, tentative and careful, two people trying to figure out if there was any relationship to salvage from the wreckage. We didn't make plans to meet again, we didn't exchange phone numbers. But we parted on civil terms, which was more than I ever expected. A year after the wedding, I received an unexpected invitation. Uncle Thomas was getting remarried. To his invitation, he included a personal note. I would be honored if you and your mother would attend. I want to start my new chapter surrounded by family who value truth and kindness. We went. The wedding was small, intimate, nothing like Rachel's extravagant affair. Just close friends and family held in a garden, simple and beautiful. Uncle Thomas's new wife, Patricia, was a widow with grown children of her own. She was warm, kind, unpretentious, everything Aunt Helen wasn't. Rachel was there. She was cordial, polite, but kept her distance. I heard through family gossip that she was working at a nonprofit now, taking a significant pay cut from her corporate job, but finding more meaning in the work. She was dating someone new, someone who wasn't from her mother's approved list of suitable partners. Small steps toward becoming her own person. Aunt Helen did not attend the wedding. She had moved to another state, cutting ties with most of the family. I heard she was telling anyone who would listen that she was the victim, that her ungrateful daughter and spiteful niece had destroyed her life. Some people believed her. Some people always believed the loudest voice, regardless of truth. But most of the family had seen through her facade. They had witnessed the revelation, seen the evidence, heard the stories. They knew the truth, and the truth had set my mother and me free. As I watched Uncle Thomas marry Patricia, as I saw the genuine happiness on his face, I thought about how much had changed in a year. A family built on lies had collapsed, but from that collapse, something better was emerging. Something based on honesty, respect, and real love. My mother sat beside me, holding my hand, tears of happiness on her face. Not for the wedding, though that was lovely, but for us. For the freedom we had won, for the truth we had claimed. After the ceremony, during the reception, Uncle Thomas approached us. "Thank you for coming. It means the world to me. We wouldn't have missed it," my mother said warmly. He looked at me. "Emma, I need to tell you something. I've been going through some old family documents, settling the divorce with Helen, dividing assets. I found something I think you should have." He handed me an envelope. Inside was a check. A substantial check. "What is this?" "It's from your grandmother's estate. When she died, Helen was the executor. She was supposed to divide the inheritance between herself and your mother equally. She didn't. She kept most of it, gave your mother a fraction. I found the real will, the one your grandmother filed with her lawyer. This is what should have gone to your mother 6 months ago." My mother's eyes went wide. "Thomas, this is too much. I can't accept this. It's not for me. It's from your mother. It's rightfully yours. Helen stole from you, just like she stole years of your life. At least I can make this part right." My mother started crying. Not sad tears, but overwhelmed tears. The money wasn't life-changing, but it was significant. Enough to ease the constant financial stress she had lived with for decades. Enough to finally take that vacation she always dreamed about. Enough to stop working 2 jobs and just enjoy life. "Thank you," she whispered to Uncle Thomas. "Thank you for seeing the truth. Thank you for caring enough to fix what you could." He hugged her, this man who had been complicit in the lies through his silence, but who was trying now to make amends. As the reception continued, I found myself talking to Patricia, Uncle Thomas's new wife. She was easy to talk to, genuinely interested in people, warm in a way that felt authentic rather than performed. "Thomas has told me everything," she said quietly. "About the wedding, about the family secret, about what you did. I want you to know, I think you were incredibly brave." "I don't know about brave. I was angry and hurt and wanted justice. Those things can coexist with bravery. You stood up to bullies. You protected your mother. You refused to let cruelty go unchallenged. That's brave, regardless of what motivated it. Rachel planned to humiliate me in front of everyone. I just got there first. You did more than that. You revealed a systemic pattern of abuse. You freed your mother from decades of guilt and manipulation. You forced a family to confront uncomfortable truths." She smiled gently. "The fact that it also stopped Rachel from humiliating you is just a bonus." I hadn't thought about it that way. In my mind, I was still the angry cousin who had ruined a wedding out of spite and revenge. But maybe Patricia was right. Maybe I had done something bigger than that. Maybe I had broken a cycle. As I write this, sitting in my small apartment looking at photos from Uncle Thomas's wedding, I think about everything that happened. About the wedding that was supposed to be my destruction but became my liberation. About the family secret that controlled us for 30 years until the truth set us free. People often ask me if I regret what I did, if I regret ruining Rachel's wedding, exposing family secrets in such a public way, causing so much pain and chaos. The answer is complicated. Do I regret that Rachel's marriage ended? No. Derek deserved to know who he was marrying. Do I regret that Aunt Helen's reputation was destroyed? No. She built that reputation on lies and cruelty. Do I regret that Uncle Thomas's marriage fell apart? No, because he's happier now with someone who actually loves him. But do I regret the pain my revelation caused to innocent people at that wedding? The guests who came to celebrate and instead witnessed family warfare? Yes. That I regret. Do I regret the rift it created in our extended family, the cousins and aunts and uncles who had to choose sides? Yes, that I regret. But would I do it differently if I could go back? No. Because the alternative was to let Rachel humiliate me, to let the lies continue, to let my mother carry that burden for the rest of her life. Sometimes the right choice isn't the easy choice. Sometimes the right choice causes pain. Sometimes the right choice looks like revenge when it's actually justice. I've learned some things from this experience, important things that I want to share. First, secrets are poison. They rot families from the inside out. The secret of my birth wasn't just a hidden fact. It was a weapon Aunt Helen used to control my mother, a source of guilt and shame that influenced every family interaction for 3 decades. When the secret was finally revealed, yes, it caused chaos. But it also allowed healing to begin. Second, cruelty compounds. Rachel wasn't born cruel. She was raised by someone who valued image over integrity, success over kindness. She learned from her mother that some people were worth more than others, that wealth and status justified judgment and condescension. That cruelty was passed down like a family recipe, and it kept growing until someone said enough. Third, silence enables abuse. For 30 years, family members saw how Aunt Helen treated my mother. They noticed the condescension, the pity, the judgment. But they stayed silent because confrontation is uncomfortable, because family is supposed to stick together, because it wasn't their business. Their silence allowed the abuse to continue, allowed my mother to suffer, allowed me to grow up feeling less than. Fourth, truth is powerful but costly. Revealing the family secret freed my mother and me, but it cost us relationships, caused pain, created conflict. Truth doesn't guarantee a happy ending, it just guarantees an honest one. And finally, revenge and justice can look very similar from the outside. What I did at Rachel's wedding looked like petty revenge. And maybe part of it was, but it was also justice for my mother, protection for myself, and a stand against systematic cruelty. The fact that it also stopped my own humiliation doesn't make it less valid. I think about Rachel sometimes. I hope she really is changing, really is becoming a better person. People can change if they want to, if they're willing to do the hard work of confronting who they've been and choosing who they want to become. I think about Aunt Helen too. I don't hope she changes because I don't think she will. Some people are too invested in their own narrative to ever admit they were wrong, but I hope she finds peace somehow, even if it's not the peace that comes from reconciliation. Mostly, though, I think about my mother. About the woman who raised me, loved me, sacrificed for me, even though I wasn't biologically hers. About how she never once made me feel like a burden or an obligation. About how she gave me everything she had, even when it meant having nothing for herself. That's what family really is. Not blood, not DNA, not shared genes. Family is the people who choose to love you, who stay when things get hard, who sacrifice without keeping score. My mother is my family. The relatives who stood by us after the revelation are my family. Even Derek, in his own way, became family through shared experience and mutual respect. Uncle Thomas and Patricia are family now too. Rachel and Aunt Helen? They're blood relatives, but they're not family. Not anymore. Maybe someday that could change if real apologies and real change happen. But I'm not holding my breath. It's been 18 months now since the wedding. Life has settled into a new normal. My mother retired from one of her jobs, using the inheritance money to finally have some financial breathing room. She travels now, volunteers, lives the life she always deserved. I'm still teaching. I love my job, love my students, love making a difference in small but meaningful ways. I don't need to be rich or successful by society's standards. I just need to be good, to be kind, to be someone my students can count on. Last week I got a letter from Rachel. Not a text, not an email, an actual handwritten letter. In it, she apologized again, but more specifically this time. She listed the things she had done wrong, acknowledged the pain she had caused, took responsibility without excuses or justifications. She ended the letter with a question: is there any chance we could try again, not as cousins, but as half-sisters? Not pretending the past didn't happen, but trying to build something new despite it? I haven't answered yet, I'm not sure what to say. Part of me wants to try, wants to believe people can change, wants to have a relationship with my half-sister. But part of me remembers the cruelty, the planned humiliation, the years of being made to feel small. Maybe someday, maybe when enough time has passed, when enough growth has happened, when trust can be rebuilt from scratch. Maybe then. But for now, I'm focusing on the family I have. The mother who chose me, the uncle who stood up for us, the friends who supported me, the life I'm building based on truth and integrity rather than lies and image. Rachel tried to use her wedding to shame me. Instead, her wedding became the catalyst for truth, the beginning of healing, the end of decades of lies. Sometimes justice looks like revenge. Sometimes standing up for yourself looks like tearing someone else down. Sometimes the right thing to do causes chaos, but I would do it all again. Because my mother deserved better, because I deserve better. Because truth matters more than peace, and integrity matters more than image, Rachel's perfect wedding ended in disaster. But from that disaster, something better emerged. Not perfect, not easy, but real. And real is always better than perfect. So to anyone reading this who feels small, who feels judged, who feels trapped by family dynamics that make them feel less than, you have power. You have truth. You have the right to stand up for yourself, even when it's hard, even when it causes conflict, even when people call you cruel for defending yourself. You are not obligated to endure mistreatment for the sake of family peace. You are not required to protect people who hurt you. You are not responsible for maintaining relationships with people who make you feel worthless. Stand up. Speak truth. Protect yourself and the people you love. And if that means ruining someone's perfect day, so be it. Because their perfect day was built on your planned humiliation, and you deserve better than that. We all deserve better than that. This is my story. The story of how my cousin tried to shame me at her wedding and how my family's darkest truth stopped her. The story of how secrets destroyed us and truth freed us. The story of how sometimes the villain in the family story isn't who everyone thinks it is. And most importantly, this is the story of how I learned that family isn't about blood or obligation or maintaining appearances. Family is about love, sacrifice, truth, and showing up for each other when it matters most. My mother showed up for me every single day of my life. At Rachel's wedding, I showed up for her, and in doing so, I showed up for myself. That's the lesson. That's the truth. That's what matters. Stand up for yourself. Protect your loved ones. Choose truth over comfort. And never, ever let anyone make you feel small for existing, because you're not small. You're strong, and your truth is your power. Wheeze it.